Well, as most of you know, last night there was another drop. I looked at it. It was late. I wanted to do some extra research, so I have taken my time. And so to try to give a little different analysis. And the point of the matter is to take a look at this in context, in historical context, and to take a look at how long that this has been festering. So the first number of the bunch is 995. Let me just kind of crank through them. The last number is 107. I'm going to skip the tests and the rest of that. Once again, Q says future proves past. I'm going to say to you, that's not the case. As a matter of fact, we have 2,000 years of past, and all that would be proven by future proves past is if we were replicating the bad stuff of old. To the extent that we see what's coming and we change what's coming and we know what's coming and we don't allow it to happen again, then the future may prove the past. But if the future proves the past consistently with where we have been, we are in deep doo-doo, okay? It goes on to say that there are several things happening today. I have been inclined to be skeptical that most of this stuff is either not happening or we are not seeing it. And I don't mean to sound negative. I think this is a monumental time, but we're not seeing most of it. One day it says for another kill box, it's got Rod Rosenstein, it's got the military, it has the border. And of course the border is under siege now with a bunch of folks walking up through Mexico. Why Mexico allows them to do so, I have no idea. And if we don't stop them at the border, there will be huge disappointment by about 50 million of us. Laura Ingram pointed out that a survey done in California shows that both Democrats, Hispanics, as well as the general population in California are in favor of closing off the border, or at least having immigration fully managed as opposed to just random and open as Moonbeam Brown seems to think it ought to be, and many of the crazies in California. So it says keep watching the news, April in a kill box, and Moab. And Moab, there are people who would believe that, excuse me just a second. There are people who would believe that Moab is a reference to Utah and the beautiful rocks there, but I don't think it is. I think it's either a letter symbolism, and somebody else will have given you that, or it has to do with the Moabites and Mesha that was in 850 BC that overthrew the Israelites. The Bible and the Jewish folks say that's not the case, but history may indicate otherwise. And even according to Kings 2 in the Bible, there were human sacrifices offered to Chemosh, the god of Moab, and that Solomon even built a high place for Chemosh on the hill before Jerusalem. So it may have symbolic reference to the whole overthrow of the religious ongoing religious beliefs of our Western world, and that there is some indication that that's consistent with the later posts, to which I will refer at a greater level. The next posting has to do with the parkland business and the fact that the mainstream media has had to change its narrative because of damaging news. Not only in this case, but in numerous cases, including Mandalay Bay and some others, there have to be modifications because the original narrative does not hold. It says people are waking up, and more people are starting to question, did this really happen this way? If there's a teacher that says the people who were shooting were heavily armed and heavily protected, looked like battle force folks, and not a kid wandering around with his jeans hanging down and his underwear sticking out. So they say to trace the background of the shooter, and obviously one of the backgrounds is that both of his parents had died. He watched his father died when he was young, and his mother had died recently. It also relates to him being abused by the neighbors and by his younger brother. And then it says focus on the father, and the stuff that I found about the father does not seem to relate to the father of the shooter, but to the father of Mr. Hogg, the Hoggy Boy, and the fact that Hoggy Boy's dad was an FBI guy, and may have had more to do with the fact that this guy bubbled to the surface than anything else, and that it's part of another psyop or another phony business, false flag, bogus banner. All right, the next one is an anonymous asks whether P is the Pope, and of course there's been discussion in the Q business for a long time about what the P meant, and they went all the way from the vice president to the buddies of Hillary on out, and the Podestas, and what Q responds is that the Pope in a kill box will be having a terrible May. Those who backed him will be pushed into the light, dark to light truth. Well, dark to light truth is a vastly bigger discussion than I can possibly cover here, and most of you, some of you have red-pilled this for years and years. Some of you are just starting to get it. But the truth of the matter is that there is darkness at the Vatican, and that darkness at the Vatican has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Let's go back thousands of years. And the evidence of it is in the symbolism, which we'll discuss at the end of this, which has to do with the adoption by the Roman Catholic Church. And remember, never to forget the fact that it is the Roman Catholic Church. It is an extension of the Roman Empire, and what the Roman Empire did to establish a church and to establish control over its territories was to adopt many pagan symbols, and in many cases to use temples and churches of the pagans by simply making a few modifications. Not only that, they took over statues and that kind of thing, pictures, paintings, etc., and simply change the names to protect the innocent and make it into a Christian basis. So there are, and this guy says, one of the Anons say, holy shit, he will be having a terrible day. And then Q responds, and this is part of the deeper process here, and again, we'll get to it as we unfold this, but Q responds by saying, the quote, chair serves the master. Who is the master? And P equals C. P doesn't equal M. P equals C. And this is really important, and I'm not sure, maybe everybody else gets this. I'm not sure that that's the case. But the Pope is the chair. The Pope obviously has a chair. And if you look at my thumbnails, the Pope is in a chair. And there's all kinds of pagan symbolism in many of these chairs. In the hat that he wears, in the skull cap that he wears, in the adornments, in the staffs, in the jewelry, in the background, in the Vatican itself, all around through it. So the Pope equals the chair, and who does the Pope serve? And you know, if you look through YouTube or through other sources, there are people that'll say, well, the Pope is the dark master and everybody else works for the Pope. I have not thought that that was the case for a long time. The papal bank was taken over, as I understand it, by the same people that have taken over 168 other banks, and the international monetary funds, the World Bank, and the rest of those, including obviously the Federal Reserve. And the Pope may well be serving those masters as opposed to the other way around. I don't think that there's an old saying, and this goes to a term that I'm going to use more, that he who has the gold makes the rules. And as some of you have heard me say, Nathan Rothschild, about maybe paraphrase what Nathan Rothschild said in the 1820s or so, and that was, I don't care who's on the throne, it is a matter of who has the money and who controls the throne, and that's me. And that has been the Rothschilds and their bunch for at least 200 years now, and perhaps for much longer than that. And so the question then is, who is the master? Well, the obvious lean in on the master is the bankers, is the ultimate bankers. And there are comments in Q that point out that the 1+, the 2+, and the 3+ are Clinton, and then the Rothschilds, and then Saudi Arabia. I frankly think that it's the other way around. I think that the Rothschilds are the 3+, and Saudi Arabia is the 2. But you know, who am I to quibble if we have to get them all, or it doesn't make any difference, right? So then Q goes on to point out that Epstein, which is the island in the Caribbean, and it has to do with why is he spending $29 million to bury tunnels, and then shows a picture of it, and the picture is of a cross, of a square, and then goes on to point out that there are 4 corners to it, that there are 4 symbolic edges to it. There is obviously a temple in one of the corners. There is an association that Q makes with each prince is associated with the cardinal direction, north, south, east, and west. And then for sacrifice and collect, and then classified 1, classified 2 in kill boxes. And I am going to take that to mean that those classified matters in 1 and 2 are things A, which Q doesn't really want to share as such, B, that are known by our classified folks, that is the NSA and others, the military intelligence, know exactly what's going on there, and 3, that it has to do with what's immediately above it, which has to do with sacrifice and collect. And I don't need to get into a great deal of detail, but if there are in fact people being brought onto the island for the enjoyment of the satanic ones, they're going to both sacrifice and then subsequently collect whatever's left over and transfer. And it points out that there are tunnels, and the tunnels obviously would serve the corners or the underground spaces. There's a comment about Table 29, and Table 29 has to do, as I see it, with a whole list of federal crimes which run all the way from murder and rape and abduction all the way out. And then it says room H, room R, room C, D, 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 pure evil, and of course it ends up being Hillary Rodham Clinton as part of it, whether that is the only symbolism of it or not. I mean, obviously I can come up with terms as to what might be going on in those rooms. Does it matter? Does it really matter? I mean, it's obviously not good stuff. Pure evil and conspiracy, and of course part of the conspiracy both has to do with how they did what they did, how they have been doing what they have been doing for hundreds of years. And if you go to Haiti and take a look at what they were doing in Haiti and what they were trying to do in Haiti, taking children out of there, taking orphans out of there, that's going on in Libya, it's going on in elsewhere. There's slavery and children being abducted, and of course that is even going on in the United States. And there is a rash of children missing in the Virginia area around DC over the last couple of years. And there are discussions about it on the internet that go back dozens of years in those same kinds of things. So the four crown princes of hell are Satan, Lucifer, Belial, and Leviathan, and there are comments about each of them and how they approach various things. Lucifer, of course, has been high on the list because Lucifer is sometimes referenced in the Roman Catholic Church. As a matter of fact, I think they named a telescope Lucifer and thought no problem with it at all. How could they do that, right? How could they do that? Well, it's supposed to be Lucifer, supposedly the morning star, and Lucifer is the alternate god for people who worship satanic or have satanic beliefs, or at least one of them. So the next one, Anon put a picture of a couple pictures and said, if Satanists took over the Vatican, would you notice? And we haven't noticed for hundreds of years. Why would we notice now? And Q responds, with symbolism will be their downfall, money, power, influence, and the bite that has no cure, the NSA. Well, take a look at the symbolism, and this symbolism is obvious. I mean, obviously the symbolism is used in the rituals, and the rituals are dark and evil. The rituals give them power, they believe. The rituals involve sacrifice and sexual craziness and all kinds of other things. And again, I don't need to go into the details. But the symbolism, you know, some of this stuff that we've picked up on, and I have often been oblivious to, you've got the Eye of Horus, right? Which is on the top of the Pentagon on your money. You've got the 666 numbers. You've got the reverse star, the upside down star. You've got Alfa Romeo showing a snake eating a human. There are other symbolisms of snakes or dragons eating children or humans, and of course it doesn't take much imagination. You've got the Pentagon, where we have our military, which has some symbolism, and you've got a whole bunch of stuff in Washington, D.C. that has been put there for, obviously, for more than 200 years. Does that mean that the people who did all of that were satanic? Not necessarily, but it also means that the symbolism was allowed to seep in. So you've got the pyramid, which are the streets, have 5 corners, and the rest of that, you've got the White House at one of the corners, supposedly the apex. You've got the obelisk, which is the Washington Monument, and guess how tall it happens to be? It's 555 feet, which is also 6,660 inches. So you've got the Capitol itself that looks from the aerially from the like an owl. You've got the Bohemian Grove, which you've heard about. The Podestas and others have used. Clintons have been to, the Bushes have been to, lots of other people, I think clear back to Nixon at least, have been to, and Bohemian Grove has this giant 15 or 20 foot tall owl. You've got the sulfur symbol, which is kind of an upside or a right side up double cross with infinity under it. You've got the upside down cross. Chelsea Clinton has worn some of these kinds of things. You've got the whole papal deal where the adoption, and this is a big important part, where the adoption of, as the Roman, remember Roman, this is not necessarily about Jesus or about truth or light. It is the Roman Catholic Church. And when the Romans took over, they took pagan temples and churches and adopted some of the symbolism of them clear back to Babylonian times. We're talking back 1,500 to 2,000 years. They took on sun symbols, they took on satanic symbols, they took on others. They've got the mitre hat, which is the tall pointy one, which is the Babylonian fish god. You've got the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, which is in the Vatican, right? You've got hexagrams and six-sided symbols, the Jewish or Hebrew symbol, which is also used by the Roman Catholics on a whole variety of things. You've got an 8-pointed star, you've got the Maltese cross, you've got pine cones, you've got dragons, and there are many other symbols that are involved in this whole papal business and in the Roman, let's not forget it, Roman Catholic Church. And that does not denigrate people who believe in Jesus. We're talking about the institution of a Roman Catholic Church. So Q goes on to point out that we are under attack, and then gives a YouTube connection to basically a 3-minute military might response, showing all of the various kinds of things that our military can do. And it says war, and the war I'm hoping we treat as not an all-out war or the Third World War, but a symbolic war, or war of ideas and thoughts and power, and the ultimate power of dark people who the dark side of things, which have to do with taking power from us as a nation. And the comment then is no deals. And that, of course, is something that Q has talked about many times, no deals. And then there is another Q point out in 1006. It says UK, and it goes on to say rogue failure. I think that probably references when President Trump was going to go to England and decided not to go. It says POTUS declined. POTUS did decline not to go. And it said prepared at all costs, and that includes being prepared to look for assassination attempts. There is some discussion among the boards that there have been at least 7 or 8 attempts on President Trump. That's not at all surprising. Let's look at our history. If future proves past, there are attempts that go clear back to Andrew Jackson, to Lincoln, to Garfield, to McKinley, and of course to JFK, and also an attempt against Reagan. So none of that is new. Finally, in 1007, the last Q posting we have right now has to do with Bunker Forest Blue. And I'm going to take that to mean, we have the Black Forest, and we may have other forests. We obviously have the Rothschilds. In the Black Forest, they sold off some property, but they have many, many properties. And then it goes, and I don't know what the blue symbol is. I have no idea why blue is of particular interest, whether that's blue, clear skies, or whatever. And then it goes on to use the 1+, 2+, and 3+ symbols, and we were told early on that the 1+ is Hillary Clinton, that the 2+ is the Rothschilds, that the 3+ are the Saudis. And again, while I question the sequence of it, that is the impact of them and their presence, I think probably the 1+, which is listed as Clinton, is probably symbolic of a whole bunch of people, not only her, but people that she represents, that were attempting to install her as a president and who had planned on closing in on this whole process. The 2+ is obvious. I mean, we have a group of people that we short nomenclature use as the Rothschilds, and they have control over 160 or so banks. There are only a couple of banks that are holdout, including Iran, which may be part of the reason why they don't like Iran. I think there are only 3 or 4 banks of note in the world that are not controlled as central banks, are not controlled by the Rothschilds and that cabal, that bunch. And then, of course, the Saudis, and the question of whether or not the Saudis were neutralized in the process of that coup and takeover that occurred late last fall. Did that change things? You know, who knows? We were told that it did, but I'm not sure that it completely did it. And then April showers. And April showers bring us the freshness of spring, bring us the opportunity for blossoming, for the new world to come about. And if I were going to take it in symbolism, which obviously this set of postings is all about symbolism, if I were going to take it that way, I would say it is symbolic of a new spring, a fresh spring, and the clearing out of the old weeds to allow for the growth of a new dawn, of a new summer. Now, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but if there's any reason to believe that all of this is happening and that there is a huge impetus within our government, and especially within the Trump administration and with the military backing and the rest of that he has, it has to be that there's a new dawn coming, because otherwise it's meaningless. It's totally meaningless. So that's my posting for today. I hope you appreciate my take on it. Thank you very much for watching. If you like it, give a thumbs up. Subscribe if you will. I have a huge, to use Trump's term, a huge announcement to make that some of us have been working on for the last few weeks, and that is relates directly to exactly why I got on to this website at the outset, and for some of my earliest postings for Pandamopoly and others. So take a look at it if you like, but hang with us because we have something coming. Thanks.